let's welcome John Patrick Morgan.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Oh, I love the muted clap. Everybody's like, I can see the clapping. Thank you so much. I love the silent applause. I need to force gallery view, so I'm not looking at me. Hold on a second. Hold on. There we go. You're back. Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be here to share. I could talk about this. I think I said in my video for Steve, I could spend over 100 hours talking about my 100 hours. I could spend hours talking about this concept today. And so I'm going to do my best to bring everything that I've got in my notes here, which is a lot, into 30 minutes. And whenever I share, like when I've got a contained space of time to be with a group of people, I try to be like, what is the one thing that I want them to get to access? And today for me, that is, I want to bring being down to earth and just make it really like tangible and accessible, right? Because obviously if you're here, that's a concept that's inspiring, but the more we can like grab it and be with being and like actually have it mean something in our life on a day-to-day, I think the more life we give it and even the more meaningful it can be. So that's my intention today. I like the idea that we're here to entertain each other. I'm here to just entertain you, like, hi, share some ideas. And you're here to entertain me as a possibility, right? To try it on, to literally just be with it and try it on as a possibility. That'll make even more sense as I talk about being today, but I'd love us to entertain each other. Is everybody cool with that? You guys happy to entertain me as well? Awesome. Thank you so much. So the title of the talk is The Seed and Fruit of Being, and I'll have that make sense as we go. But I thought I want to put the doing back in being, and that will tie into the title. So that's one of the things here. Bring being down to earth and put the doing back into being. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me just say what I think being means first. What does it mean for me? Let's kind of define that. And I like to use like an all caps being versus like an uppercase being. So the all caps being is just like capital B, capital E, capital I, capital N, capital G, being. That's the being. When I use that word, that's the being that's like when people talk about like that disassociative space when you're outside of thought, right? When maybe through a meditation practice or some kind of psychedelic journey or a overwhelming spiritual experience where it's like you're out of, you are something greater than this internal activity, than what's happening in the world. It's this something, it's where now my language starts to fade out because it's where we can't really get to with words, right? And so I'm sure a lot of you, if you're here, you've had some kind of experience where you're something greater than this material world, this world of form. And I think a lot of people do use the word being to represent that. Like it's a signpost, Eckhart Tolle would say, beyond language and even meaning into the now moment. It's that, Joe Dispenza might call it no space, no time, witness consciousness, pure love, right? Love, like all caps, love, just love. And to me, that's the ground from which all the other kind of being arises in its most powerful form. And so I'll use a metaphor to how I distinguish, like the way I use being typically isn't that, but I do believe that's like super important, that space, to be able to come from that space. The way I'm typically using the word being is best represented through a metaphor of like the nozzle on my hose or in my garden. So like, those spray nozzles where it's like, you turn the thing and it shifts from like a jet stream to like shower mode to mist mode. So the all caps being that I was talking about is like, I am water, right? I kind of want to use the Bruce Lee, be water, but like water is being, right? But then like the all caps being like, you are, that's what you are. That's the I am, like water. But then like the being that I'm talking about often is like capital B being, is like what the setting is on the nozzle. So am I being shower mode? Am I being jet mode? Am I being mist mode? Like it's the form that the essence takes in the world. Like, am I being kind? Am I being valuable? Am I being, or am I being the other thing? Am I being a jerk? Am I being not valuable, right? Like, what is the form that my being is taking in the world? And so I think of it as like love put into form is like all caps being put into like capitalized being. And so in Steve's language, when you have a document, a bunch of ideas, to me, those are like settings on a nozzle, for your garden hose. And you want to have settings that like, it's important, right? Like, let's put love into forms. Let's put love into the form that I am valuable, because that creates something in the world. Like, what the form and shape love takes creates something. Like, I know now that I'm learning how to garden, if I use jet mode when I'm watering this little pot, like, I'll blow the plant right out the other side of the pot. Like, it's like, I'm still being water, like I'm still love, but I'm killing the plant, right? So it's important. It matters in this material world. Like, who am I being in the sense of form? And I have found it so, fascinating and liberating to find out that one, I can become aware of who I'm being in the moment, or in moments, and that I have something to say about that, and I can do something about that. And that's the key word, doing. So let's bring it back to that, right? Because, okay, so I'm giving you a sense of what I mean by being. Oh yeah, this is the other thing I want to say. Like, it's not what we do, right? It's who we're being. We hear that a lot. And I think we can all relate to that. I'll give a simple example. It's easier to see in other people. We've been staying at this hotel in Santa Monica, and they evidently have this rule that we found out about the third night, that you only get 2 bottles of water. We didn't know that, because the first 2 nights we asked for more water and they just brought more water up. And the third night I called for more water, and the lady said, no, you've got your 2. That's your quota. You have to buy now from the mini fridge that we don't have, because I took it out because we have kids in the room. And so it was like, the problem wasn't that she wasn't giving me the water. The problem was just kind of being a jerk about it, right? And so there was like, there's the rule, and then there's the being behind the rule. And so we can all get a sense of, it's not what somebody's doing, it's what they're being. Like, if they could be nice about it, right? We say that. We say, well, they could have been nicer about it. They could have been kinder about it, but they were being kind of blah, 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 blah. And so when we look at people out there, we can see that when we know for ourselves, right? And so if, like, I was doing all the right things, I was helping the person, but they didn't become a client. Well, maybe I wasn't being that it was valuable. Maybe I was just doing the things that were supposedly valuable, and maybe they were valuable, but maybe I wasn't being that it was valuable in my heart. In the same way, maybe I wasn't being kind. Maybe I wasn't being loving. And so we understand and we get that it's who we're being that matters more. You know that Simon Sinek has that TED Talk, Start With Why. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. And I think that the why comes from the who. I would say it's not why you do it, it's who you are. But you could just go a level deeper. When you know who you are, when you're being something, the why is what emerges when you meet a circumstance. Let's think for a second. Like, if I am kind and loving, and then I do something with somebody that's kind and loving, I'm doing that thing because I am kind and loving. So at the bottom of everything is this core identity, who we're being in a particular moment, that creates the why, that creates the how and the action. It's just a level deeper than why. Oh, that's the other thing I wanted to say about entertaining me today. I'm going to go, I have notes, but I'm going to go non-linear. I'm jumping all over the place. And I understand and I know that sometimes it's hard to keep up with me, like logically. That's okay, because I'm actually more interested in you being with who I'm being when I share with you than you keeping track of every idea. And I think this will be recorded anyway. So I recommend that you don't hold on too tightly to making sure you make sense. When I speak, I'm actually giving myself permission to speak at the precipice of my own capacity to even make sense of what the hell I'm saying. And there's something in that for me. That's an aspect of who I am. So this is also an opportunity for you to just get me. And Lindsay, thank you for what you said about you feeling like you got to know me a little bit in my video. You absolutely did. When people meet me that have been watching my videos, they said, I feel like I know you. You actually do, because I'm being who I am, and I'm just accessing this being, and I'm sharing it. And you will probably know aspects of me better than I know myself if you're paying attention, because I'm giving you the truth of who I am. And what did I saw this awesome quote. I'm not going to try to find it on, am I going to try to find it? Let's see, I'll give myself 1 second. Nope, the scroll just got refreshed. But it was like something around, maybe the best thing we can do is love ourselves so fiercely that we show other people how to do it, right? And so, like, my primary mode of contribution to the world is my being. And so that's why right now in my talk, and I'm sharing this also to be explicit with you as an example, as a way to make being primary, to be more concerned with who I'm being in this moment than I am even making sense of anything. Now, I know that I am making sense, but I'm just trying to point out to you that, like, there's a radical stance that you can take for being, where you put it first. The first words out of my mouth every morning are, I am constant creation and my being is primary. And I slow down on that because I mean it. My being is primary. And And it's not the only thing, it's primary. It's the most important thing. And how do I meet that? Well, in a talk like this, when I'm like, man, I just said 17 different things in like 3 seconds. That's okay, because my being is primary. It's just like, slow down and be with the fact that just sharing what's true for you, looking at these faces, knowing what's in your heart, and expressing that. Like, all the words are an opportunity for people to be in a space where they can experience you caring more about what your purpose is to share who you are than making sense of anything logically. And having said that, now let me go back to what I was saying. Yeah. Okay. When you hear the concept of being and you get that it's more important than doing, and it speaks to you and you're inspired by it, and it's like, oh my God, that's so much simpler. That's such a simpler way to live. It's just easier. I don't have to concern myself so much with what I do. I can just focus on being. It's really liberating. And then it starts to be a little bit confusing. Well, I should say for me, it had, because it's like, okay, so what do I do though? Right? It's, you know, I be this, but what do I do? And so I actually want to like I said earlier, put the doing back in being. Well, for me, being with my document, again, in Steve's language, like to take this list of declarations, as I was doing before this call today, and look at them and read them, that's doing something. And it's an important doing. I call that an in doing. When I'm doing something that is inwardly oriented, I'm in doing. And just as it is like planting seeds in my garden, watering the garden, this is all a cultivation of a way of being. So there's activity, there's action that cultivates being. So let me just give you a little bit of a window into what that activity looks like. I mean, there's millions of ways to do it, but for me, like writing down these words over and over and over again of who I am is a doing that cultivates being. And when I write these words, writing them as a meditation, right? So I have this idea I call speak, see, feel, right? It's like you speak something for one reason and one reason only, so that you can see it in your mind's eye. And by seeing something in your mind's eye and imagining it, you can actually start to feel it. And when you feel it, there's neural synaptic connections that are made, right? Feeling is the dump of neurological chemicals into your bloodstream, which creates the possibility for protein synthesis, which creates new neural connections that brings those ideas that you're seeing to life and creates patterns, so that way of being becomes more available to you, right? And so every time that you sit down and you be with your document, you don't just read it, it's like, I am loving kindness. It's like, no, you're like, I am loving kindness. And you see yourself with your wife, and she's frustrated with the kids, and you hold their hands, and it's like, and then she smiles and you smile, and you feel warmth in your heart here now as you practice that. It's like, that's real. It's actually happening for your body, and it's becoming a part of who you are. It's you're becoming more conditioned and habituated to show up that way. And then later that afternoon, when that thing's happening out there in the world and you're witnessing it, it's like you have actually created more of a possibility for you to move in the direction of that material action than you had prior to that imagined experience. And so every time I sit down with my document or my declarations, like I am entertaining these, right? And to go back to what I was saying earlier, I'm trying them on. I'm being with them. And the more emotive I can be with that, the more patient I can be with it, the more I can allow myself to daydream like a kid and really be in it. Like my son watches like 30 minutes of a TV show, then for the next hour, just walking around like in this, you wave your hand in front of his face. He's not there. He's in some other, world, like having a battle. He's just entertaining this constantly and imagining it. And it's like that. If we can daydream our declarations, if we can immerse ourselves in the lived experience inside of our mind, in this rehearsal, and then when we meet the world, it just plays out in that same way, then we are doing something that creates being, right? And so where does being come from? From doing. So this is why it's like, that's the seed. Every time you sit down and be with your declarations in a way where you can actually see it and actually feel it. Now, let me give you a little trick on how to actually see it. It's like, oh, I can't see it. I'm loving kindness. That's the concept. How do you see loving kindness? You give it a context. Say, give it a time, give it a place, give it a person, pick a person. Say with this person, and then with that person, and with this person, at work, at home. As soon as you apply a concept to a context, boom, images jump into your mind. And when you can see it, give it, look at it, zoom in. Who is it? Color. What are they wearing? And ask questions that pull you into the visual. And the more you see it and you see their faces change and the smile in your mind's eye produces warmth in your heart. So you should play it out. You're the director, you're the producer of this movie. And these declarations are just a script, but you want to bring it to life. You want to sit back and entertain yourself with the movie of your life lived as being these things in your mind. And the more time you spend doing that, the more it will be patterned for you and the more it will come out in your waking life, in your actual life, in your material life. And so the more it will come out in that life, like I said, the example earlier, or if I imagine myself, one of the things I'm practicing now, I'm silence, I'm listening, I'm waiting, I'm silence, I am listening, I am waiting. And I see myself with my wife and I see myself having that urge to speak, that violent act to give instruction or advice that just is like, wants to explode out of me. And I see myself sitting with it and I see me growing stronger, burning that desire as in like the fires of something higher. And I see myself holding and and it feels like it does when I'm holding like a plank. It's like, I can do this. I can keep my mouth shut. And it's like, and I feel the glory of that burn. And I see her talking and I see me listening. I see her talking and I see me listening. And then I see her saying to me, I'm just creating this with you right now. Thank you so much for listening. And I feel warmth and I feel proud and we hug and it's beautiful. And I see in my mind's eye the way it could play out if I was being that thing that I aspire to be, which I can see in the past that I haven't been that many times. And it becomes, now that I feel great about that, it becomes more available. And I can guarantee you that today, just that little 7 seconds of practice, that opportunity, that choice will be more available to me with my wife when something happens later in the day. This moment with you being that in my mind will have me be that with her. And when I do be that with her later today, because of what we just created here together, that's the fruit. That's the fruit. So in that moment, I will be doing listening. I will be doing waiting. I will be doing silence. That's the fruit of me being silence, listening, and waiting. All right, the doing. So the seed is the doing right now that I did with you. And the fruit is the doing that I do with my wife. Now let me take that away in the sense that let me collapse those two things into the same thing, right? Because just like how a piece of fruit has seeds in it, when I do that with my wife, guess what? That's an outdoing, right? That's the fruit. Guess what it's got in it? It's got the seed. It's an indoing. So when I be silent with my wife, when I wait, when I be that I'm listening, and I do listening, I do waiting, I do silence, I'm actually creating that same experience that I just created here with you, which is a teaching to myself about who I am. So every outdoing is an indoing. Right? Every time I do something that's an expression of a being, I actually become more of that. I create even more because I have that same warmth in my heart in the imagined experience as I do in the real experience, and that becomes more true to me then. And so I become more of it. You know, James Clear talks about he does this book about habits, and his language for it is identity. I mean, it's a little less sexy and less beautiful and less spiritually profound than being. I think it's an aspect of being, but it's an important part of it, right? And it's like our habits are the outgrowth of our identities. If, a big simple one for me is like, I always had a hard time getting to the gym. It was never something that I really found that fun. And then I got into CrossFit and I took on the identity of an athlete. And it was hard for me not to go to the gym because I'm an athlete. Athletes go. And so the identity being something, an aspect of being identity is a big part of what has you do certain things. And doing those certain things educate you as to who you are and what your being is. So that was fun in the sense that I create this distinction called in-doing, and it was fun for me anyway, in-doing and outdoing, and then to collapse them into the same thing. I'll give you another example of how I saw this, and it was like so profound to me. I love this example. When my son was 2, he was biting. And we were trying to teach him not to bite. We tried everything in the book, including biting him back, and it did not work. He just bit harder, and I was like, okay, scratch that. But anyway, I read this line in the Tao Te Ching about something like, I forget where the line right now, but it was something about meeting high intensity with low intensity. And then when he bit me, he was only 2. He didn't even really have that many words. Probably part of the reason he was frustrated and biting. But I just started like going really down on the ground and soft and like having my energy be really gentle. Even though he was biting me and it hurt, I was just like, gentle, easy. Like my response was calmer than his intensity. And that started to work. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And he just would stop. And so I would say gentle, gentle, easy eating. It became this pattern of responding to his biting, right? And so that was me being lower intensity in the face of his high intensity. And that was working. And that was an outdoing. But what I didn't realize is that it was also an in-doing for me. And I didn't realize it until one day I was walking into my kitchen and I just heard that phrase in my mind. My son was nowhere around. And I was like, why did I just say that to myself? That's weird. And so then I tracked back and I was like, what just happened there? I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm walking into the kitchen to get a snack and I was judging myself for doing that because I'm fasting. My goal was to fast today. And I was going to the fridge to get something to break the fast early. And I was judging myself for it. And then my mind saw me biting myself. And it said to me, gentle, gentle, easy, easy. So all of that outdoing, all of that fruit was planting seed. I was being gentle and kind to my son when he was biting. And then my mind did it to me all by itself. I never even thought to say that to myself. And so the thing is, it's not like if we really pay attention to our outdoings, they can become indoings. They can't not. Every single thing that we do in our life teaches us who we are. Every action is a bite of the apple that contains the seeds that creates our being. And so for me, I say there's 3 reasons to take an action. The third reason to take an action is because if you don't, you can't win if you don't play, right? Results come from action. So if you want the chance at a result, you got to take an action. That's the third best reason to take an action. The second best reason to take an action is because whether I win or lose, get the result, don't get the result, I get the opportunity for learning and growth. That's even more important to me than the result, right? So that's the second best reason to take an action. I can figure something out about that. But the number one reason to take any action is because by taking that action, I teach myself who I am. If I do something kind, I may get a result. I may not get a result. That's a third reason. If I do something kind and it doesn't land, I learn about how I can do kindness in a way that maybe lands more effectively for that person, right? They may not have gotten it because of their listening and stuff. But most importantly, if I do something kind, that's from my heart, kind, I just taught myself that I am kind. So every action is the fruit of a way of being that contains the seed of that being. And so that's for me, if there's anything that you take from this, like this is my favorite thing that I've seen through my work with Steve and my own self-reflection continuously. It's like, it's always right there. Like the opportunity to declare who we are sits in every moment in the opportunity to act. Like I declare who I am when I keep my mouth shut and listen to my wife. That's a declaration. It's a creation in that moment. So every action or non-action that's an act is an opportunity to create who I am. How are we on time? I've got a few more minutes. Good, because I want to get this in too. Each of these little concepts that I'm sharing is a tip of an iceberg of stuff that you can find more in the Ultimate Coach Facebook group. If there's something in here that you want to hear more about that I don't get to today, post a question in that group and I'll try to expand on it for you. But the other thing that I want to mark out here is that as you become aware of being, and as you become aware of the seed and fruit of being, which is action, which is doing, that you could do something to create a way of being inwardly that can create outward actions that can also that are inward actions that create who you're being. As you become all aware of that, watch out for what I call the weaponization of that awareness, right? You become aware that I could be being this and I wasn't being that. And see what I just did there with my forehead? That part right there. That's what I call kick the dog. It's like, oh shit, I wasn't being that. It's like you just kick the dog. The dog is you. And more important, remember I said earlier, it's like more important than you guys are making any sense of what I'm saying is that I'm being the truth of who I am and coming from my heart in my sharing. It's more important. In the same way, more important than who I was being even 5 seconds ago is who I am being now in relationship to who I was being 5 seconds ago, 5 minutes ago, 5 days ago, 5 years ago. Why is that? Well, because being is always now. Being is a present progressive concept. It's in this moment, unfolding here, now. It doesn't matter who I was, who we were, who we will be, who we may be, as much as who we're being. And not only in this moment in relationship to each other, but even more than who I'm being in relationship to other people matters who I'm being in relationship to myself 2 seconds ago or in 1 minute from now, right? So the being in relationship to yourself is the place where the highest leverage is. And I see this all the time in myself and others, and it's the highest place of leverage is what you call it, I call it the meta relationship. You call it meta judgment. So you judge yourself as not kind, and then you show up as not kind. I'm using kindness as an example today, I guess. And then you get down on yourself for being not kind. That's way worse. That's what I call a meta judgment. You're judging yourself for having judged yourself as a certain way. And so the most important thing we can do in any moment is to, in this moment, if we're going to witness a way of being that wasn't if I wasn't being as powerful as I could, and I love that. And I love that, right? Byron Katie calls loving what is. Like love what was too. Love what is, love what was, love who you were, who you are, love all of it. Is that really loud for you guys, the garbage truck outside? No, okay, cool. All right. I was being that it was really loud, but I'm glad that it isn't. I want to use the last minute here to make sure I say the thing that's most important for me to get across. I'm going to jam it in. What do we got? Okay, this is the last thing. I alluded to it earlier. This will bring it full circle. Being is also in the other person. It's not just in you. It's co-created, man, lady, right? Even that's an example. You know, I said man, lady, because I know that when I say being man, like that's me being cool, being the language that's there for me. And that's, but if everybody saw the way that I saw the world, then it would land for you. But some people might not like being called man, right? And so it's like, and lady, and am I still going to get it right? Some might not like that either. And so it's realizing that who I am being is also in the listening, right? And so you might work at a hotel and you might just be doing what you always do, feeling really good about yourself, really good about the day. Somebody calls down, asks for water, and you're being who you are, and you're saying there's only 2 bottles. And then they, for some reason, think that you're being a jerk, and you're not being a jerk, but they think that you're being a jerk. And they might not want to stay at the hotel again. You're just doing your job. You've got kindness in your heart. And so it's not just the fact of being kind from your opinion and your perspective, it's also in the other person's. So there was something in me when I called down for the water that created that she was being a jerk. Where's that? That's in me, right? And so in a way, it says it's 2 things. Number one, it lowers the bar on, am I getting it right in my being? At the end of the day, you get to decide if you're being love, you're being kindness. But it also has you get that like people out there have something to do with that. And it's not like this is a problem. It's like, wow, that's an exciting opportunity because I am being loving kindness as far as I know, and I'm being that with them, and it's not landing. So it's like, that's not their problem. That's a fun puzzle to figure out. What would kindness look like in this world? For me to have it in my heart and for them to feel it in there. And that's just for me, that's fun. Let's invite that puzzle and figure that out. So there you go, guys. I love you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to entertain my like wild ride of being and all these different ideas and concepts. I look forward to a continued conversation. I love you all. Thank you, Steve, for being here. Thank you, Lindsay, for the intro. Gabby, everybody. Thank you so much, Lisa and Tiffany, Eric. I love you guys. Bye for now.